PQNK, the Natural Ecosystem Science of Production Agriculture. What you are about to study is not a new theory. It is a return to an operating system that has governed life on Earth for 400 million years. This document presents PQNK, Peter Krati Nizam Kashata Kiari, a science-based protocol for production agriculture that works with the living biological architecture of soil rather than against it. Its premise is straightforward: the soil beneath every field is not an inert mineral substrate. It is the most biologically complex ecosystem on the planet. When that ecosystem functions, it delivers fertility, moisture, pest protection, and yield, continuously, at no purchased cost. Every principle in this document flows from that single, measurable truth. Soil does not begin as soil. It begins as rock. Over geological time, mycorrhizal fungi and lithotrophic bacteria secrete enzymes and organic acids that attack mineral surfaces, initiating biological weathering and releasing mineral-rich particles. In the second stage, bacteria produce sticky polysaccharides that bind these particles into aggregates. Fungi manufacture glomalin, a glycoprotein that cements aggregate structures, and earthworms pass material through their digestive systems, creating the porous architecture through which water and roots move. By the third stage, a single teaspoon of this living soil contains more organisms than there are people on the planet, a food web of bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, and 10,000 other species. In the fourth and final stage, plants establish, and through their roots exude sugars, amino acids, and complex compounds, wages paid to the microbial community in exchange for nutrients. This partnership has operated without interruption for 400 million years. It is the foundation on which all terrestrial life depends. This graphic explains where plant mass comes from and why soil minerals are not the limiting factor. All plants are built mostly from the air and water, using sunlight. 95.917% of plant mass comes from the atmosphere as carbon dioxide and water through photosynthesis. 4% of plant mass comes from nitrogen in the atmosphere, captured by nitrogen-fixing bacteria in the soil. That requires aerated soil for active biological life. Only 0.083% comes from the geological mineral bank and from recycling within the soil. Soil holds massive mineral reserves compared to what crops remove each season. Phosphorus 180 to 1. Potassium 1000 to 1. Nitrogen 50 to 1. The mineral bank is not empty. The biological machinery that accesses it has been shut down. We must restore the mycorrhizal networks, revive soil biology, restart organic matter cycling, and re-establish root exudates so minerals become available again. This is a universal protocol, applicable worldwide, based on Earth's original design. Living soil is structured in 4 distinct biological zones. The organic mulch layer, from 0 to 2 centimeters, is where decomposition begins and carbon inputs enter the system. The topsoil zone, from 2 to 20 centimeters, teems with life and cycles nutrients at high speed. The root and mycorrhizal zone, from 20 to 80 centimeters, hosts extensive fungal networks that access water and minerals far beyond the reach of roots alone. Below 80 centimeters lies the subsoil, a vast mineral and moisture reservoir that deep roots can unlock only when the overlying biology is intact. In this system, bacteria fix nitrogen and suppress disease, mycorrhizal fungi extend the functional root surface by orders of magnitude, protozoa graze bacteria and release nitrogen in plant-available form, nematodes regulate populations and cycle nutrients, and earthworms aerate the profile and create permanent macropores. A single teaspoon of healthy soil contains 1 billion bacteria. Industrially farmed soil retains 5 to 10% of that population. The difference between these two numbers is the difference between a living system and a degraded one. The biological wealth contained in living soil is routinely underestimated because it is invisible to the naked eye. A single teaspoon of healthy soil hosts 8 billion organisms, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, actinomycetes, and microarthropods. 1 hectare of living soil carries 25 tons of biological biomass, The weight of 4 adult elephants, performing nutrient cycling, water regulation, disease suppression, and structural engineering continuously and at no cost to the farmer. A single gram of soil can support mycorrhizal networks extending 20 kilometers, connecting plants across a field, sharing water, nutrients, and chemical signals. This is nature's internet, ancient, sophisticated, and entirely free when the conditions for its operation are maintained. The biological difference between living soil and agrochemically managed soil is not a matter of degree. It is a matter of whether the engine is running at all. Let us examine the plant's construction in greater precision. The sun provides energy. Carbon dioxide from the air and water from the soil provide the raw materials. Through photosynthesis, the plant assembles these into carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and structural compounds, 99.9% of its dry mass. The soil's mineral contribution, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, sulfur, iron, zinc, manganese, copper, boron, and molybdenum combined, accounts for just 0.083%. And yet, the fertilizer industry has built a $100 billion market around that fraction, while simultaneously destroying the biological systems that deliver it naturally. The fertilizer paradox is this: synthetic NPK addresses only 0.083% of a plant's mass, while damaging the biological machinery that performs the far larger work of building the other 99.9%. Here is one of the most important transactions in nature, and the least taught. While the plant is busy capturing carbon from the air above ground, between 20 and 30% of all the sugars it produces through photosynthesis are deliberately sent downward, through the roots, into the soil. Not lost. Not wasted. Invested. The plant releases these sugars as root exudates, liquid carbon, to feed the microbial community in the rhizosphere. In exchange, that community mines and delivers the minerals the plant needs. This is a perfect transaction, refined over hundreds of millions of years. It is not random. It is not accidental. It is the most sophisticated economy on the planet. And agriculture, through tillage and flooding and chemistry, has been shutting it down. This is the liquid carbon pathway, nature's carbon pump, and the mechanism by which living soil builds itself continuously. Step by step, carbon dioxide from the atmosphere is captured by leaves during photosynthesis and converted into sugars. Those sugars move downward to the roots. Research shows that between 20 and 40% of all photosynthate, all the carbon the plant fixes, is deliberately delivered below ground. The roots release this carbon as exudates into the soil community. The microbial community feeds on it, metabolizes it, and in doing so converts it into stable soil organic matter. Mycorrhizal fungi produce binding compounds, including glomalin-related proteins, which research is still characterizing precisely, that glue soil particles into stable aggregates. Those aggregates hold carbon for decades, even centuries. This is how living soil builds itself. This is how a PQNK field becomes more fertile every season without any external input. The carbon pathway is not a metaphor. It is a measurable, replicable, biological process. The divergence in soil organic carbon trajectories between PQNK and conventional agrochemical systems is among the most powerful data series in regenerative agriculture. Both systems begin at the same point, 0.8% soil organic carbon. Under conventional tillage, flooding, and chemical management, soil organic carbon declines steadily, reaching 0.3 to 0.4% after 20 years, a loss exceeding 50% of the original stock. Under PQNK, with mulch protecting the soil surface, biology being continuously fed, and the liquid carbon pathway operating unimpeded, soil organic carbon rises to 5% or above, a six-fold increase over the same period. The point of irreversible divergence occurs around year 10. After that threshold, the two systems do not merely differ in performance, they occupy different categories. One is a soil in decline. The other is a soil in continuous biological ascent. 4 to 10 times more carbon is captured and stored in PQNK systems, entirely without cost, as a natural consequence of a living system doing what living systems do. The conventional assumption that a farm's water budget consists of irrigation alone is ecologically illiterate. A healthy PQNK soil is a living sponge. It draws from 4 natural water sources in sequence. Rain, the highest priority source, falls and is fully absorbed into the living mulched bed, none is lost to runoff. Dew condenses overnight on the organic mulch surface and soaks downward into the root zone, contributing measurably to the moisture budget. Atmospheric humidity is absorbed by the carbon-rich organic surface and condenses within it. And capillary rise draws stored moisture upward from the subsoil between rainfall events. Bare, conventionally managed soil loses 60 to 70% of incoming water to evaporation before it can serve any biological function. A PQNK soil loses essentially none. The mulch layer acts as a complete evaporation barrier. Surface temperatures on bare soil peak at 58 to 62 degrees Celsius during summer months, shutting down all biological activity. Beneath 3 inches of organic mulch, the same soil remains at 26 to 30 degrees Celsius, within the biological optimum, throughout the season. The water savings achieved under PQNK agriculture are not incremental. They are transformative. Across the 5 major field crops, rice, wheat, cotton, maize, and sugarcane, PQNK systems use between 8 and 25% of the water consumed by conventional flooded or irrigated equivalents. Conventional flooded rice uses 3,000 to 5,000 liters of water per kilogram of grain produced. PQNK rice uses 350 to 500 liters, a reduction of 70 to 92%, while producing more than double the yield. This is not achieved through water restriction but through water intelligence. A living mulched soil absorbs rain fully, retains it through capillary forces in stable aggregates, draws atmospheric moisture, and uses irrigation only as a supplementary top-up, applied in the furrow, never on the bed surface. The biology performs the work of retention and delivery that conventional systems attempt, and fail, to replicate with energy-intensive infrastructure. Bacillus thuringiensis, BT, is not a single bacterium. It is a community of related species, each producing proteins toxic to a specific class of insect larvae. BT kourstaki targets caterpillars and bollworms. BT israelensis targets mosquito and blackfly larvae. BT tenebrionus targets beetle larvae. BT izawai targets wax moths and armyworms. And additional BT species control sucking insects including whitefly, thrips, and aphids. This entire community is naturally present in healthy living soil. It requires no purchase, no spray application, and no genetic modification to function. It is self-renewing, free, and species-specific. In 1953, researchers isolated these bacteria from diseased insect larvae and subsequently commercialized them as sprays and gene inserts, creating a $100 billion pesticide market to sell back to farmers what their own living soil had always provided for nothing. What was never told to farmers is that BT bacteria are already in the soil, and they require only a living soil ecosystem to thrive. A farm in biological balance does not require pest management because it manages pests itself. A healthy soil ecosystem supports upward of 1,700 species of natural predators, ladybirds controlling aphids and mites, green lacewings preying on whiteflies and thrips, parasitic wasps targeting caterpillars and bollworms, spiders managing leafhoppers and flies, predatory mites controlling thrips and small insects, ground beetles consuming slugs and soil pests, syrphid flies targeting aphids, and birds and bats managing moths and flying insects across the field canopy. When pesticides are applied, these predators are killed first, because they are at the top of the food chain and most exposed. The pests they controlled, selected by evolution for rapid reproduction, rebound within days. The natural enemy system collapses, and pest populations explode. Every pesticide ever sold was sold into a biological vacuum that did not exist in nature. The vacuum was created first, and then the product was sold to fill it. Weeds are not the enemy of the farmer. They are diagnostic instruments. Each species colonizes precisely the soil conditions that allow it to thrive, and in doing so, reveals what the soil lacks and what it is attempting to repair. Dock and dandelion, with their deep tap roots, indicate compacted soil with impenetrable hardpan layers. Horsetail and sorrel indicate acidic conditions, with soil pH between 4.5 and 6.0. Lamb's quarters and pigweed explode in high nitrogen soils, mining excess fertility and converting it to biomass. Bindweed colonizes crusted, low biology soils where the surface is sealed and microbial activity is suppressed. Nutsedge indicates waterlogged, anaerobic conditions. Thistles establish in severely depleted soils with very low organic matter and biological activity. The farmer who reads these signals correctly does not need to spray. He needs to correct the underlying soil condition, and the weed, no longer required, will depart. As PQNK practices are implemented, the soil conditions that sustain problem weeds are progressively eliminated, and the weed community changes accordingly. In the first season, damaged soil produces high weed pressure, pigweed indicates excess nitrogen, bindweed signals biological poverty, nutsedge reflects waterlogging, and dock marks compaction. By the second season, as mulch dissolves crusts, biology activates, structure improves, and water management stabilizes, weed pressure declines and the indicator species retreat. By the third season, weeds become rare, a few harmless pioneer annuals and grasses with no underlying pathology to signal. The soil is balanced. The weeds are gone. This sequence is not accidental. It is the measurable biological signature of a healing soil. The disappearance of diagnostic weed species is not merely a cosmetic improvement, it is quantitative proof that the soil condition has been corrected at its root cause. The first farmer, approximately 10,000 years ago, buried a seed in the ground and disturbed the soil to protect it. That act was innocent, a practical response to predation, hunger, and uncertainty. The disturbance was modest. Between seasons, the 400 million year operating system partially recovered. But the plow expanded the disturbance. Large-scale irrigation altered natural hydrological cycles. The Industrial Revolution mechanized total soil inversion. And by the 1960s, the Green Revolution had converted violation into doctrine, tillage, flooding, synthetic fertilizer, chemical pesticides, and monoculture applied simultaneously and universally. By the year 2024, the result is visible in every metric: soil degraded, water wasted, biology destroyed, farmers in debt, food depleted, and ecosystems in collapse. The first act was a mistake, made in ignorance. The system that grew from it is a choice, sustained by commercial interest. The next act can be wise. Tillage is the hinge on which the entire failure of industrial agriculture depends. When soil is tilled, the consequences cascade in a fixed and predictable sequence. First, the mycorrhizal hyphal networks, the biological infrastructure through which minerals and water reach plant roots, are physically shattered. Second, soil aggregates break down, releasing stored carbon as carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. Third, the exposed mineral surface forms a structural crust through which rainfall cannot infiltrate. Fourth, water that cannot enter the soil runs off, carrying topsoil with it and dropping it into waterways. Over successive seasons, a dense, water-impermeable hardpan forms below the tilled layer, typically between 6 and 12 inches deep, blocking roots from reaching the mineral and moisture reserves of the subsoil. The biological system, suppressed and structurally destroyed, can no longer deliver nutrients or regulate water. Productivity declines. The farmer purchases fertilizer to compensate for lost fertility, pesticides to compensate for lost biological balance, and irrigation to compensate for lost water retention. Each consequence creates the next requirement. Tillage is the first act. Dependency is the last. The genius of the agrochemical input system is not that it solved the farmer's problems. It is that it designed problems the farmer could only solve by continuing to buy. Tillage destroys soil structure, so synthetic fertilizer is sold to hide the infertility it created. Synthetic fertilizer collapses the microbial community, so pesticides are sold to manage the pest outbreaks that result from ecological imbalance. Pesticides kill the natural predator community, so more pesticides are required as pests develop resistance and secondary pests explode unchecked. Crusted, structurally compromised soils cannot absorb rainfall, so flood irrigation is applied to force water into a system that has lost the capacity to receive it naturally. And with each cycle, the soil degrades further, the yields become more dependent on inputs, and the farmer's financial margins narrow. This is not an agricultural system. It is a dependency loop, engineered, sustained, and profitable for its designers. Each intervention creates the next requirement. The economic consequences of the agrochemical input system are measurable, documented, and global. In Pakistan, a farmer in 1970 spent approximately 10% of cash receipts on purchased inputs. By 1990, that figure had risen to 25%. By 2010, 45%. By 2024, between 55 and 70%, and in high input crops like cotton and potato, above 80%. Over the same period, the farmer's net income, adjusted for inflation, has not risen proportionally. It has, in many cases, fallen. The yield did not rise to compensate. The purchased input treadmill is not a metaphor. It is a measured, quantified, and mathematically accelerating trap. The only exit is to change the system, to restore the biological architecture that performs, at no purchased cost, the functions for which the farmer currently pays. From 1958 to the present, 3 data series tell the story of industrial agriculture with unambiguous clarity. Synthetic fertilizer use has risen from near zero to approximately 200 million tons per year, a 20-fold increase. Crop yield per hectare rose strongly from 1958 to approximately 1990, then plateaued, and has shown little or no net increase for most major crops since. Soil organic carbon has fallen relentlessly, from roughly 2% in 1958 to below 1% in most productive agricultural regions today, a loss exceeding 50%. 3 lines. More inputs. Stagnant yields. Degraded soil. The experiment of industrial agriculture is complete. The accounting has been done. The result is more inputs buying less food from more degraded soil. The system is working exactly as designed, for the industry. Not for the soil. Not for the farmer. Not for the future. The indictment of industrial agriculture does not rest on theory. It rests on 6 measured numbers. 1/3 of the world's topsoil has been lost since 1950. Over 40% of the world's major aquifers are in decline. Pollinator populations have halved or worse in many regions since 1950. Soil microbial diversity has been reduced by up to 80% in industrially farmed land compared to living soil. Farmer indebtedness across the developing world stands at historic highs. And the mineral density of key nutrients in staple crops has declined by 20 to 40% since 1950, meaning food today contains measurably less of what the human body requires. 6 numbers. All moving in the wrong direction. All measurable. All consequences of the same system. The question is no longer whether the system has failed. It is what replaces it. The research that determines agricultural practice is not neutral. It is funded by the industry whose products it evaluates. Agrochemical, seed, and machinery corporations define research priorities, provide institutional funding to universities, research stations, and journals, and expect outcomes that support their commercial programs. Research that supports these programs is published and promoted. Research that challenges them, that demonstrates the effectiveness of living soil management, the toxicity of persistent residues, or the biological costs of tillage, is unfunded, unpublished, and invisible. This is not a conspiracy. It is a structural consequence of allowing commercial priorities to govern the production of public knowledge. The farmer receives a packaged message: use more inputs, trust the system, repeat. What was suppressed is the knowledge that the system itself is the problem, and that the solution requires no purchased input at all. The data on agricultural research funding confirm what the structural analysis predicts. From 1990 to 2024, public agricultural research funding across most major countries has been flat or declining in real terms. Over the same period, corporate research funding has risen severalfold. By the 2020s, in many national research systems, corporate funding exceeds public funding for agricultural science. In patent applications, corporate dominance is even more extreme. What gets funded gets studied. What cannot be commercialized gets ignored. Questions about living soil management, biological pest suppression, and mulch-based water retention are difficult to fund because the answers require no patentable product. Questions about new fertilizer formulations, genetically modified seed varieties, and synthetic pesticide molecules are heavily funded because the answers generate commercial revenue. The research agenda follows the money. Free the questions. Fund independence. Restore the science. Before examining the evidence that follows, one fact must be established, because it changes the weight of everything you are about to read. This work is self-funded. It has received no government grant, no corporate sponsorship, and no agrochemical industry money. Not a single rupee of external funding has entered this research, which means not a single result has been shaped by a funder's expectation. It is non-commercial. PQNK sells no fertilizer, no pesticide, no seed, no subscription, and no consultancy package. A system that recommends zero purchased inputs at maturity has no financial interest in telling a farmer to buy anything. It carries no institutional affiliation. There is no university department to protect, no tenure committee to satisfy, no research station agenda to serve, and no curriculum to defend. The observations were made in fields, season after season, across 30 years, not in controlled laboratory conditions designed to produce publishable outcomes. And the knowledge, unlike the business enterprise that was built alongside it, cannot be foreclosed. Assets can be seized. Revenue can be stopped. A protocol built from 15 years of uninterrupted field observation, codified measurement by measurement, belongs to no creditor and answers to no shareholder. This matters, because the previous two slides demonstrated that the research determining agricultural practice globally is funded by the industry whose products that research evaluates. The conflict of interest is structural, not incidental. The antidote to captured science is not louder argument. It is independence, provable, documented, and complete. PQNK, picnic, is independent. Completely. And the beneficiaries of that independence are not merely the researchers. They are everything the system touches. Soil recovers its biological wealth. Water is absorbed rather than lost. The water cycle, broken by tillage and bare soil across millions of hectares, is restored, rain enters the ground, aquifers recharge, and floods that previously carried topsoil into rivers instead percolate downward into the earth. Plants access a full spectrum of minerals and biological compounds. The atmosphere receives carbon drawn down by the liquid carbon pathway and stored permanently in living soil aggregates. The farmer's production cost falls by up to 85% at maturity, and 60% of those savings remain with the farmer as higher net income, zero purchased inputs, and financial freedom replacing decades of debt dependency. 40% of those savings are passed on to the consumer, as nutrition-dense food grown without harmful chemicals, carrying the mineral density and phytonutrient richness that nature designed, at a price that reflects what food actually costs to produce when biology does the work. And the planet receives what no technology has yet delivered at scale, a carbon sink that runs on sunlight, a water cycle that heals itself, and biodiversity restored above and below ground, with no externalized cost passed forward to future generations. No conflict. No trade-off. No one impoverished so another can benefit. When the soil is alive, everybody wins. That has always been the design. The failure of industrial agriculture cannot be addressed piecemeal, because each of its 7 bankruptcies feeds the others. The ecological bankruptcy, soil, water, and biodiversity collapse, generates the nutritional bankruptcy, as depleted soils produce food depleted of minerals and phytonutrients. The nutritional bankruptcy generates the health bankruptcy, as chronic disease rates rise in parallel with the adoption of high-input chemically managed agriculture. The economic bankruptcy, farmers locked into rising input costs and falling net margins, generates the social bankruptcy, as rural communities hollow out and migration to cities accelerates. The knowledge bankruptcy, the systematic displacement of the farmer's empirical wisdom by an agrochemical manual, removes the adaptive intelligence required to manage biological systems. And the moral bankruptcy, a system that survives by concealing its own costs, prevents honest accounting of the damage. These 7 bankruptcies are not separate problems. They are one problem, expressed in 7 dimensions. The nutritional consequence of 6 decades of industrial agriculture is documented, peer-reviewed, and alarming. Comparing the mineral content of common vegetables and fruits between 1950 and 2020 reveals an average decline of 20 to 40% in key minerals: calcium, magnesium, iron, and zinc. Protein content in wheat has fallen measurably below levels recorded 70 years ago. Vitamin C content in broccoli, cauliflower, and potato is significantly reduced. The mechanism is well understood. Synthetic fertilizer feeds the crop's mass, its yield in tons per hectare, but does not deliver the soil mineral diversity and biological cycling required to build the crop's nutritional content. A plant grown in biologically dead soil, fed by soluble nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, produces the expected weight. It does not produce the expected nutrition. We are eating more calories. We are consuming less food. The profitability of industrial agriculture rests on a fundamental accounting fraud. The costs it generates are not charged to the industry that creates them. They are paid silently by farmers, consumers, taxpayers, and future generations. The true annual cost of industrial agriculture, the externalized bill, is estimated at $1.9 trillion per year globally. This includes $400 billion in soil degradation, $350 billion in water depletion and contamination, $300 billion in greenhouse gas emissions from tillage and synthetic inputs, $300 billion in pesticide and fertilizer runoff damages, $250 billion in biodiversity and pollinator loss, and $300 billion in rural health damages. Against this, the PQNK restoration dividend, the value of regenerated soil, restored aquifers, reduced purchased inputs, stabilized climate, and recovered health, is estimated at $4.7 trillion per year if deployed globally. The choice is not ideological. It is arithmetical. When the full economic accounting is performed, including the externalized costs currently invisible on any balance sheet, the case for transition from industrial to PQNK agriculture is not merely compelling. It is economically irresistible. Continuing industrial agriculture costs the world $1.9 trillion per year in externalities. Adopting PQNK at scale delivers $4.7 trillion per year in saved externalities. When productivity gains, nutritional density improvements, and restored ecosystem services are included, the total annual dividend of global PQNK adoption exceeds $7.5 trillion. The net difference between the two systems, what is lost by continuing, versus what is gained by changing, is $6.6 trillion per year. That is an economic proposition larger than most national economies. Stop paying for destruction. Start investing in regeneration. Most critics of industrial agriculture have never run it. Asif Sharif ran it, for over 2 decades, at national scale. Between 1973 and 1997, he pioneered mechanized farming across Pakistan. Tractors, combine harvesters, precision planters, laser land leveling. He didn't just use these technologies, he represented the world's leading machinery brands, built the dealer networks that put them in farmers' hands, trained the operators, and wrote the technical manuals that set the standards. In 1981, he established Pakistan's first international tractor dealership, bringing globally recognized machinery into a farming system that had never seen it. By 1983, combine harvesters were reaching Pakistan's fields for the first time. Harvest losses dropped. Efficiency went up. In 1985, he imported and introduced precision planters, improving seed placement accuracy and crop uniformity across the country. Then in 1987, a landmark. He became the first farmer in Pakistan to introduce and operationalize laser land leveling. Irrigation water use dropped by 25 to 30%. Crop stands became uniform. What he pioneered is now standard practice across Pakistan's plains. By 1990, a nationwide dealer and service network was in place, trained operators, strengthened after-sales support, a countrywide infrastructure he had built from the ground up. And in 1994, he documented it all, technical manuals on modern agricultural machinery, published so that the knowledge could outlast any one person. This is what mastery looks like. Not theory. Not observation from the outside. Hands on the machine. Skin in the game. You cannot see what is wrong with a system from the outside. You must go in. You must master it. You must understand, with your hands, what it claims to do, and what it actually does. Only then can you know what to replace and what to keep. That is the foundation of PQNK. Not rejection out of ignorance. Rejection out of mastery. The departure from industrial agriculture was not driven by ideology. It was driven by four field crises that the agrochemical system could not explain and could not resolve. In 1991, bollworm resistance rendered conventional pesticide applications ineffective, the chemistry stopped working. In 1993, whitefly populations exploded uncontrollably on a crop that had never previously required whitefly management, a secondary pest, held in check by natural predators, had become primary once those predators were eliminated by pesticide use. By 1998, spraying inputs had doubled yet yields had not moved, the system was consuming more and delivering nothing additional. And in 2001, Bt cotton was adopted with the promise of ending pesticide use. Within 3 seasons, total pesticide applications had exceeded pre-Bt levels, as secondary pests the Bt gene did not address proliferated in the ecological vacuum. 4 questions the industry could not answer. 4 truths the field could no longer ignore. In 2008, on a field trip to the Amazon, Asif Sharif stood in a forest that had been growing in perfect productivity for 400 million years. No machine had tilled it. No farmer had fertilized it. No chemistry had protected it. The canopy was dense. The understory was lush. The soil beneath the leaf litter was black, friable, and alive. Everything that industrial agriculture claimed to deliver, fertility, moisture, protection, productivity, was being delivered here, by the system itself, continuously, at no cost. Whatever was missing from a Punjabi field was missing because it had been removed, not because it had never been possible. The revelation was not philosophical. It was physical. Leaf litter provides continuous carbon input. Soil life decomposes, builds, and recycles. Root networks explore and structure the profile. Mycorrhizal networks mine minerals and share them across plants. The system sustains life above and below ground, endlessly, at no cost. It is the model. It has always been the model. In 2011, the first formal PQNK rice trial was published in Paddy and Water Environment, a peer-reviewed Springer journal. The results were considered paradoxical within the conventional framework: 12.84 tons per hectare, more than triple the regional average of 4 tons per hectare, achieved on permanent moist soil raised beds, without flooding, using 70% less water, and 70% less labor. The paper was the world's first peer-reviewed introduction of what was then termed paradoxical agriculture, the direct precursor to PQNK. Each claim was measured. Each measurement was replicated. The paradox existed only within a framework that had forgotten how rice actually grows. Rice is a semi-aquatic grass. It does not require flooding to produce grain. Flooding was adopted historically as a weed suppression strategy. The raised bed, with moist undisturbed soil and organic mulch, achieves superior weed suppression without biological destruction, and delivers superior yield as a direct consequence of the living soil beneath it. The name is not cosmetic. It is a claim. Peter means sustainable and enduring, designed to function across generations without degrading the resources on which it depends. Krati means natural, from nature, working with biological processes, not overriding them. Nizam means system and order, a coherent set of principles in which every element supports every other. And Kashatakiari means agriculture and cultivation, the art and science of growing crops within a natural system rather than by force. Together, PQNK is a specific, codified return to Earth's 400 million year operating system. It is not organic farming, which permits tillage and flooding. It is not conservation agriculture, which may use herbicides. It is not regenerative agriculture as the term is commercially applied. PQNK is defined by what it prohibits and what it requires, and those definitions are absolute. The acronym, deliberately made easy to say, is PICNIC, so that a farmer anywhere on Earth, asked what he practices, can answer in a single word. The PQNK protocol was not developed in a university or a research institution. It was built in the field, over 15 years of uninterrupted observation, during a period when the commercial machinery enterprise was being systematically dismantled by business pressures, litigation, and political reversals. Between 1995 and 2010, every week spent on the land was a deposit in a knowledge account that no legal process could foreclose. The business, assets, revenue, control, and reputation could be taken. The knowledge could not. Systematic data recording began in 1996. Patterns emerged by 1997. Hypotheses were tested from 1998. Protocols were refined through 1999. Results were replicated across sites from 2000 to 2002. Field truths were codified by 2003. And by 2010, when the first formal trial results were published, 15 years of uninterrupted field observation had produced a codified protocol that could not have emerged from any institutional setting. Adversity became the laboratory that commercial success would never have permitted. PQNK is defined first by what it prohibits. There are 4 absolute prohibitions, and violation of any single one disqualifies a production system from the designation of natural ecosystem science for production agriculture. First, no soil inundation with water. Flooding drowns terrestrial microbes which cannot survive in oxygen-depleted, waterlogged conditions. Second, no soil disturbance through tillage. Tillage physically destroys the mycorrhizal hyphal networks, breaks soil aggregates, releases stored carbon as carbon dioxide, and resets the biological clock to zero. Third, no bare soil. The soil surface must at all times be blanketed with thick organic mulch, which regulates temperature, retains moisture, suppresses weeds, and continuously feeds the microbial community below. Fourth, no unicropping. Monocultures eliminate ecological interactions, reduce biodiversity above and below ground, and create the conditions for pest and disease epidemics that chemical management then attempts to suppress. These 4 are not preferences. They are biological thresholds. Violate one, it is not PQNK. The 4 prohibitions are matched by 4 positive principles that, together, replicate the essential features of nature's 400 million year operating system. First, permanent raised beds, formed once, never destroyed, provide the stable physical architecture on which all biological recovery depends. Second, no-till precision planting using the slit insertion precision planter or vertical insertion precision planter developed by Padaver, which places seeds through the mulch layer into undisturbed soil at precise depth and spacing, without disturbance to the surrounding biology. Third, thick organic mulch coverage, a minimum 3-inch layer across every bed surface, replicating the function of the forest floor as thermostat, moisture vault, weed suppressor, and continuous food source for the biological community. Fourth, soil moisture management that prioritizes the four natural water sources: rain, dew, atmospheric humidity, and capillary rise, and supplements with furrow irrigation only when those sources are exhausted. Follow all four. Nature does the rest. The transition from a degraded, conventionally managed field to a functioning PQNK system proceeds in 8 defined steps. Step 1, assessment: read the weeds, test the hardpan depth, map the water regime. Step 2, hardpan shattering, a single, one-time deep subsoiling operation to break the compacted layer. This operation is performed once and never repeated. Step 3, sulfuric acid water wash, acidified irrigation water flushed through the profile to leach accumulated salts and neutralize the alkaline legacy of chemical management. Step 4, bed formation, permanent raised beds constructed to the standard PQNK profile. Step 5, precision planting via SIP or VIP. Step 6, mulch consolidation to the 3-inch target. Step 7, soil moisture management irrigation applied furrow only as a supplement. Step 8, continuous observation, reading the plant, the soil, and the weeds, and making no intervention the field is not requesting. Within one growing season, a degraded field becomes a functioning PQNK system. Soil recovery under PQNK is not gradual. It is stepped. Each biological indicator arrives in its own month, and once present, does not depart. By month 2, water infiltration doubles from 0.3 to 0.6 inches per hour and remains high and stable thereafter. Mycorrhizal colonization of root length rises from 0 to 25 to 40% in the same month. Earthworm populations rise from 0 to 3 to 8 per cubic foot as the biological community establishes. Soil temperature under the mulch layer falls 20 degrees Celsius below bare soil measurements at peak summer. By month 3, ACI indicator weed species fall below 20% of the weed population and continue to decline. By months 5 and 6, crop yield matches conventional yield while input costs are reduced 60 to 80%. Not gradual. Predictable. Measurable. Permanent. Nature's recovery sequence, reinstated by design. Every conventionally managed field carries, beneath its tilled surface, an invisible wall. Year after year, the plow pushes moist soil against the layer below, compacting it into a dense, water-impermeable hardpan, typically 6 to 12 inches deep and 2 to 6 inches thick. This layer prevents roots from reaching subsoil minerals and moisture. It blocks rainfall from percolating downward. It traps salts at the surface. Rain that cannot enter the soil must run off, taking topsoil with it and contributing to flood conditions downstream. The PQNK transition begins with shattering this layer once, using deep subsoiling equipment or a hardpan cutting knife that fractures the compacted zone without inverting the soil above it. After that single operation, the soil is never disturbed again. Biological processes, root channels from successive crops, and earthworm activity maintain the profile's vertical continuity permanently. One operation. Permanent restoration of the soil's connection to its own subsoil wealth. The hardpan does not merely restrict water movement. It restricts the fundamental architecture of the plant itself. In a hardpan locked field, roots reach 8 to 12 inches, encounter the impermeable layer, turn sideways, and remain confined to the shallow tilled zone. Water, minerals, and the microbial wealth of the subsoil remain permanently inaccessible. In a PQNK field, after a single hardpan shattering event, roots descend freely. Wheat roots reach 3 feet in one season. Cotton roots penetrate 4 to 5 feet. Sugarcane roots descend beyond 8 feet, accessing a mineral and moisture reservoir of extraordinary depth and richness. Deeper roots access a vast new mineral zone. They draw moisture from subsoil reserves between rainfalls. They anchor the plant against lodging and wind damage. And they deliver more raw material to the above-ground system, which responds with more photosynthesis, more sugars, more exudates, and more biological activity in the rhizosphere. Remove the hardpan once. Restore the design forever. Soil moisture management is the water delivery protocol that defines PQNK irrigation practice. It operates on a single principle: irrigation water is never applied to the bed surface. Water runs exclusively in the furrows between beds, at a maximum head of 4 inches, soaks downward through the broken profile, moves laterally through the soil matrix, and rises by capillary action into the bed's root zone. The bed's surface remains dry. The mulch remains intact. The biology remains undisturbed. The aggregates remain stable. Because water is traveling through the soil's natural conduits rather than overtopping them, it is used with almost no loss. Evaporation from the bed surface is zero. The moisture is stored in the pore spaces and aggregates of the living soil matrix, where it is available to roots on demand throughout the interval between irrigations. This is not irrigation as conventionally understood, it is topping up a living sponge. The field is not flooded. It is replenished. PQNK soil moisture management is governed by a hierarchy of water sources, and supplementary irrigation occupies the last position in that hierarchy, not the first. Rain is the highest priority source, fully absorbed into the living mulched bed with zero runoff. Dew forms overnight on the mulch surface and soaks downward into the root zone. Atmospheric humidity is absorbed by the carbon-rich organic surface layer and condenses within it. And capillary rise draws stored soil moisture upward from the subsoil between rainfall events. Only when all 4 of these natural sources are exhausted does supplementary furrow irrigation begin. In practice, across many PQNK wheat fields in Pakistan, only 2 to 4 supplementary irrigations are required per season, against 12 to 20 in conventional flooded systems. For rice, 3 to 5 supplementary furrow flows replace the continuous standing water of conventional paddy systems. Nature supplies first. We supplement last. The 3-inch organic mulch layer is doing more biological work per unit area than any other element on the PQNK farm, simultaneously and continuously. As a thermostat, it keeps soil temperature within the biological optimum of 13 to 26 degrees Celsius even when air temperatures exceed 50 degrees Celsius. As a food source, it feeds the microbial community continuously as it decomposes, sustaining biological populations season after season without external inputs. As a weed suppressor, it blocks light from reaching weed seeds at the soil surface. Seeds that germinate beneath it cannot penetrate 3 inches of dense organic material. And as a moisture vault, it prevents evaporation from the bed surface, captures dew, absorbs atmospheric humidity, and delivers it steadily to the root zone. This layer is not ornamental. It is the farm's thermostat, its fertilizer factory, its herbicide, and its water management system, compressed into 3 inches of organic material. The measurement data from PQNK farms in Punjab during June and July, when air temperatures regularly exceed 50 degrees Celsius, provide one of the most striking demonstrations of mulch's biological value. On bare soil, surface temperatures peak at 58 to 62 degrees Celsius. At 5 centimeters below the surface, temperatures reach 50 to 54 degrees Celsius. At these temperatures, all soil biological activity ceases. Microbial populations collapse. Enzymatic processes shut down. The biological system enters a state of heat-induced paralysis that persists through the peak growing season. On PQNK mulched beds, under identical atmospheric conditions on the same day, surface temperatures remain at 26 to 30 degrees Celsius. 5 centimeters below the surface, temperatures measure 24 to 26 degrees, squarely within the biological optimum range of 13 to 26 degrees Celsius. Biology runs at full speed. Water is conserved. Yields remain high. A 30-degree gap. The difference between life and shutdown. The slit insertion precision planter was developed by Padaver specifically to solve the problem of planting through a 3-inch mulch layer into undisturbed soil, a task for which no commercial planter had been designed. The SIP operates in 5 precise steps. The slit blade cuts a narrow slit through the mulch and opens a small aperture in the undisturbed soil below. A single seed is gravity fed from the hopper through the seed tube to the bottom of the slit, positioned at the precisely set depth. The slit closer will presses the soil back firmly around the seed, ensuring good seed-to-soil contact without disturbing the surrounding mulch or biology. The mulch guard pushes aside surface material without disturbing the underlying structure. Conventional wheat is broadcast at 40 to 50 kilograms per acre. PQNK wheat, planted by SIP, requires 8 to 10 kilograms, a five-fold reduction in seed cost, while producing a higher stand and superior yield. Conventional agriculture measures seed application in kilograms per acre, a weight-based unit that reflects the broadcast paradigm, in which seed is scattered densely to compensate for poor germination, competition, and irregular depth placement. PQNK counts in plants per acre, a precision-based unit that reflects the knowledge that each seed placed by SIP at optimal depth in undisturbed soil will germinate and establish as a strong individual plant. PQNK wheat targets 65,000 plants per acre, requiring approximately 78,000 seeds placed, 5 times fewer than conventional broadcast application. PQNK rice targets the same plant density with the same setup. PQNK cotton targets 17,000 plants per acre, each capable of producing 150 to 200 bolls in living soil. PQNK maize targets 42,000 plants across 3 annual crop cycles. And PQNK sugarcane, nursery raised and transplanted, places 2,200 transplants per acre per cycle. PQNK counts. It does not weigh. The PQNK transition moves through 3 phases. Phase 1 is the degenerative state inherited from agrochemical management, tillage, bare soil, external inputs, declining biology. Phase 2 is the regenerative transition, proceeding through 4 defined steps: hardpan shattering, sulfuric acid water washing, permanent bed formation with initial mulch, and the retention of roots and mulch from successive crops to rebuild soil life and structure. Phase 3 is the closed-loop state. In Phase 3, the farm becomes an autonomous biological entity. The root microbe nexus operates as a perpetual abundance machine, photosynthesis captures energy, root exudates feed the soil food web, microbes mobilize and deliver minerals in balanced proportion, and the plant receives exactly what it needs in exactly the amounts required. External inputs are not merely reduced, they are not required, and their introduction disrupts the proportionate biological balance the system has achieved. Phase 3 is not an aspiration. It is a measured, repeatable, documented outcome. The economic trajectory of the PQNK transition follows a declining cost curve that is as predictable as it is profound. In the first crop, production costs run at 50 to 65% of conventional costs. By the second crop, costs fall to 30 to 45%. By the third crop, the majority of PQNK farms operate at closed-loop zero purchased input, costs representing 20 to 30% of conventional. Costs continue falling through crops 4, 5, and 6 as the system matures and purchased inputs become progressively obsolete. By crop 6, production costs approach 5% of conventional, driven almost entirely by labor, fuel, and equipment amortization. The declining cost curve is not speculation. It is a measured feature of every fully executed PQNK transition. Biology, not purchases, does the work. And biology costs nothing when the conditions for its operation are maintained. This single chart captures why PQNK belongs in a category of its own. We've evaluated 6 farming systems, from conventional chemical agriculture all the way to PQNK, across 8 criteria that decide whether a system is truly regenerative, or just less harmful than what came before. Look across the rows. Conventional agriculture, on the far left, fails on nearly every count. Tillage destroys soil structure. Fields flood. Residues are burned. Inputs are heavy and expensive. Herbicides wipe out the living web above and below ground. Biodiversity collapses into monoculture. Yields rise early but decline over time. Production costs keep climbing. And the produce itself, what ends up on your plate, is depleted of nutrients and carrying chemical residues. As we move right, each system improves. Organic, biodynamic, regenerative, conservation agriculture. They each do something better. But notice the pattern, every one of them still depends on external inputs, still tolerates some compromise, still treats biodiversity and produce quality as variable. And here is the deeper reason why. Every system on this chart, apart from PQNK, is built on the assumption that nature needs to be managed, supplemented, corrected. None of them is truly science-based, because science is the observation of nature, and nature demonstrates one principle above all others: perpetual abundance. The forest is not fertilized. The grassland is not irrigated. They thrive because every loop is closed and every life form has its place. The other systems simply do not believe perpetual abundance is possible, and so they cannot deliver it. Now look at the far right column. PQNK is different in kind, not just in degree. Zero soil disturbance. Zero flooding. Continuous mulch, a permanent shield over the earth. Zero purchased inputs. A full food web above and below ground, biodiversity at its maximum. Yield that is highest and sustained, yields that actually rise over time, not decline. Lowest cost, approaching zero. And, this is the criterion that touches every one of us: produce of the highest quality nature can offer, nutrient-dense, residue-free, full of flavor and shelf life that come only from soil that is fully alive. This is why we say PQNK is not a variant of the others. It is a different category. It is the only system that restores the soil, closes every loop, and delivers perpetual abundance. It is Earth's original design. 5 outcomes, each individually impressive, are simultaneously delivered by a mature PQNK system, and no other agricultural system delivers all 5 at once. Zero purchased inputs at maturity, no fertilizer, no pesticide, no synthetic or organic external amendment, verifiable on every acre. Yields that match or exceed conventional yields on the same land. Water use reduced by 70 to 92%, with nature maintaining soil moisture through mulch capture, dew, humidity absorption, and capillary rise. Produce that is nutritionally superior to organically certified equivalents, carrying higher bioactive compound concentrations and nutrient density. And soil organic carbon rising continuously, season after season, representing a measurable and permanent contribution to climate stabilization. All 5 features operate simultaneously from the same 42-inch mulched bed, the same 18-inch furrow, and the same supplementary furrow flow. One system. 5 outcomes. The perpetual abundance machine. The PQNK rice result is not a single data point. It is a pattern, replicated across 4 countries, across a decade of independent trials, and across diverse soil types and climatic conditions. Pakistan, Punjab, 2011, 12.84 tons per hectare, more than triple the regional average of 4 tons. Pakistan, Sindh, 2015, 11.2 tons per hectare. Punjab, multi-site average, 2018, 10.8 tons per hectare. Korea Cooperation Trial, 2021, 9.8 tons per hectare. Every trial produced more than 2.5 times the regional average yield. Every trial used less than 30% of the water consumed by conventional flooded paddies. Every trial was conducted on permanent moist soil raised beds without flooding. PQNK rice uses 8% of the water of flooded paddy. The flood was an assumption. The bed is the truth. The geographical spread of PQNK rice trial results eliminates the possibility that the outcomes are an artifact of local conditions. In Israel, 2019, 10.6 tons per hectare against a regional average of 4 tons. In India, Punjab, 2017, 11.3 tons per hectare. In India, Haryana, 2017, 10.4 tons per hectare. In Thailand, 2020, 10.1 tons per hectare. In China, 2022, 10.7 tons per hectare against a regional average of 4.2 tons. The pattern holds across Mediterranean, South Asian, East Asian, and Southeast Asian climates, across heavy clay and alluvial soils, across monsoonal and arid rainfall regimes. One crop. One principle. One global truth. Rice does not need to be flooded. It never did. The raised bed, with moist living soil and organic mulch, is the biological truth on which the future of rice cultivation can now be rebuilt. At the National Agricultural Research Center in Pakistan, a single PQNK wheat plant was measured at 78 tillers. At the Padavar demonstration farm in Lahore, another measured 94. In conventional wheat, the typical range is 3 to 6 tillers per plant. The difference is not genetic. It is architectural. A single seed placed by SIP at precise spacing in undisturbed, biologically active, permanently raised bed soil encounters no competition, no soil compaction, no chemical suppression, and no hardpan. Its roots descend freely. Its mycorrhizal associations form unimpeded. Its access to water and minerals is unrestricted. And the plant responds as wheat is designed to respond to optimal conditions, by producing tillers, additional seed heads, and a yield 20 to 40% higher than conventional while using 5 times less seed per acre. By crop 3, nitrogen fertilization drops to 0. By maturity, purchased inputs are 0. This is what wheat does when the soil is alive and the system stops fighting it. The economic data from PQNK wheat production in Punjab in 2024, derived from farmer interviews and field records, demonstrate the financial transformation that the biological transition delivers. Conventional wheat production costs run between 56,000 and 66,000 rupees per acre, distributed across seed, fertilizer, irrigation, pesticide and herbicide, and labor and mechanization. PQNK wheat from the third crop onward runs at approximately 9,700 rupees per acre, an 85% reduction in production cost. The difference flows directly to the bottom line. Conventional wheat net income runs at 20,000 to 30,000 rupees per acre. PQNK wheat net income, from the third crop onward, runs at 50,000 to 70,000 rupees per acre, 2 to 3 times the conventional net income on the same land, in the same season, growing the same crop. Lower cost. Higher yield. Higher income. That is the PQNK wheat difference. Cotton was the crop that drove the original departure from agrochemical management, 4 successive crises between 1991 and 2001 that the conventional system could not explain or resolve. And it is cotton that provides the most dramatic demonstration of what PQNK restores. A conventional cotton plant carries 60 to 100 bolls per plant and requires 12 or more pesticide spray applications per season. A PQNK cotton plant on permanent raised beds with living soil and thick mulch carries 180 to 210 bolls, 2 to 2.5 times more, and requires 0 spray applications. The spray cost of 20,000 rupees per acre goes to 0. Lint yield increases by 20 to 40%. The predator community, 1,700 species, always present in living soil, manages bollworms, whiteflies, aphids, and sucking pests without intervention. The biological system that conventional approaches spent decades attempting to compensate for with chemistry was available all along. It needed only to be restored. Within 3 seasons of mass Bt cotton adoption in Pakistan, total pesticide use had exceeded pre-Bt levels. Bt cotton produces a protein toxic to bollworm larvae, 1 species, addressed by 1 gene. All other pest species, whitefly, aphids, mites, jassids, thrips, are completely unaffected. But the pesticides applied to manage bollworms in the era before Bt killed not only bollworms but the entire predator community managing all other pests. Once Bt was deployed and bollworm pressure fell, farmers reduced spraying, and the natural predators of secondary pests had already been eliminated. Secondary pest populations exploded. The ecological vacuum that conventional pesticide use had created remained, the technology that promised to fill it addressed only one of the species that colonized it. PQNK does not address one pest. It restores the ecosystem. 1,700 predator species manage the field. The ecosystem is the solution. It always has been. In a conventional maize system, one crop is grown per year. The field lies fallow between harvest and the next planting, soil is exposed, biology declines, and the full economic potential of the land remains unrealized. In a PQNK system, 3 maize crops are grown on the same acre, in the same permanent beds, every year. Spring maize sown in January and February, harvested in April and May. Summer maize sown in May and June, harvested in August and September. Autumn maize sown in September and October, harvested in December and January. The soil is always covered. Always moist. Always biologically active. Always ready. The permanent mulch layer keeps soil moisture stable and the biology fed between crops. The active biology recycles crop residue nutrients continuously. And the farmer realizes 3 to 4 times the annual yield per acre of conventional monoculture, at 70 to 80% lower cost per crop. 3 crops. Lower cost. Higher yield. Better soil. That is PQNK maize. Bamboo grows its roots for years before the first shoot rises above ground. When it emerges, the stored energy of that root investment drives shoots that are strong, fast, and tall. PQNK sugarcane follows the same biological principle. One planting establishes a root system. From that root system, successive retuning harvests are taken for 5 years or more, without replanting, without plowing, and with the same root mass feeding every harvest. Conventional sugarcane retuning runs for 2 years before yield declines and replanting is required. PQNK sugarcane retuning extends to 5 years, because the biological integrity of the root zone, maintained by mulch, living soil, and permanent beds, sustains root health across successive seasons. The results are measurable: 44% higher sugar content per ton of cane, 87% less water use, and 5 seasons of harvest from a single planting cycle, with no plowing for the entire period. Soil organic matter builds every year. The mill receives sweeter cane. The farmer earns more. Conventional potato farming is a high-risk, single-income strategy. 1 crop per year, 1 chance to succeed, seed costs running at 30,000 to 40,000 rupees per acre, and the biological disruption of annual soil disturbance that progressively degrades the growing environment. PQNK potato operates on an entirely different model. Permanent raised beds hold dormant tubers between cycles, eliminating the need to purchase and plant fresh seed for each cycle. Seed costs fall to 7,500 to 10,000 rupees, a 75% reduction. 2 to 3 cycles per year deliver continuous income and substantially reduce weather-related financial risk. Yield rises to 18 to 22 tons per acre, 2 to 2.5 times the regional average. And tuber quality improves: higher dry matter content, longer storage life, richer mineral profile, and superior taste, all consequences of biologically active, mulched, undisturbed soil delivering a more complete nutritional environment to the developing tuber. The PQNK garlic system demonstrates the economic power of design diversity, the deliberate integration of multiple complementary crops on the same acre in the same season. Garlic, planted in October and harvested in April, is the primary crop, generating 600,000 to 900,000 rupees per acre. Onion, planted as an intercrop in November and harvested in March and April, adds 150,000 to 300,000 rupees. Coriander, fenugreek, spinach, and radish, companion vegetables sown in staggered succession, contribute 40,000 to 200,000 rupees cumulatively. Total gross income from 1 acre over 6 months, 1 million rupees, routinely. A conventional single-crop garlic system on the same acre over the same period generates 250,000 to 350,000 rupees. The difference is not the garlic. It is the design. Every inch of the bed is productive throughout the season. Multiple harvests deliver multiple cash flows. 1 acre can change a family. One system can change a future. Across the citrus belt of Toba Tek Singh in Pakistan, 15 to 25-year-old trees were exhibiting progressive decline, yellowing foliage, reduced fruit set, increasing dieback, and falling yields. The conventional diagnosis was age. The trees were old. The PQNK diagnosis was different, the soil under them was dead. In 2019, 120 declining trees were converted to PQNK management, mulch applied to the root zone, soil moisture management implemented, no further chemical inputs. By year 1, foliage had returned to full green. By year 2, fruit set had recovered to match the tree's historical peak production. By year 3, canopy regrowth exceeded the historical peak. The conventional trees continued to decline throughout the same period. The tree did not die of age. It died of soil. And it revived, measurably and completely, of soil. Dead soil kills trees. Living soil revives them. Central Punjab presents conditions that conventional agronomy textbooks classify as unsuitable for banana production, temperatures reaching 48 degrees Celsius in summer, falling to 4 degrees Celsius in winter, annual rainfall of 300 to 400 millimeters, and heavy clay loam soils with poor drainage characteristics. And yet, on PQNK permanent raised beds with thick organic mulch and soil moisture management, full-size banana bunches have been produced commercially in central Punjab. The mulch maintains soil temperature within the biological optimum regardless of atmospheric extremes. The permanent beds and broken hardpan provide drainage while retaining capillary moisture. The living soil biology provides nutrient cycling and disease suppression. The textbook was not wrong about the climate. It was wrong about the soil. Fix the soil, and the crop's climate range expands dramatically. Every tropical crop the textbook rejected, the soil has accepted in PQNK. 5 crops conventionally classified as unsuitable for Pakistan's plains and semi-arid regions have been successfully established under PQNK management. Strawberry in Sindh, year-round fruiting achieved, with continuous flowering and harvest across all seasons. Olive in South Punjab, first commercial oil pressings produced from trees in a region considered too hot and arid. Bamboo in Chakargarh, multi-year shoot production with strong commercial clumps. Watermelon in Umerkot, high sugar, high yield production on 50 to 60% less water than conventional in a water-scarce region. And saffron in the Chitral uplands, successful bulb establishment and first harvest achieved. Each crop received the same treatment, living soil, permanent raised beds, thick organic mulch, and soil moisture management. The textbook was not wrong about the climate. It was wrong about the soil. Fix the soil, and the textbook's limitations disappear. The 1-acre PQNK prosperity model demonstrates that a single acre of fully implemented PQNK management, deploying design diversity and integrated systems, is capable of supporting a family not merely at subsistence but at genuine prosperity. The model integrates 4 income streams. Vegetables across 6 months generate 400,000 to 700,000 rupees. Seasonal cereals generate 150,000 to 250,000 rupees. Permanent fruit trees generate 150,000 to 300,000 rupees. And dairy livestock integrated into the same system generate 300,000 to 500,000 rupees annually. Total gross income, 1,250,000 rupees per acre per year, from input costs of 50,000 to 100,000 rupees. Net income, 900,000 to 1,650,000 rupees per year. 1 acre. Dignity, not dependence. Prosperity, not poverty. Pakistan drowns in the monsoon and thirsts for the rest of the year. This paradox is not a hydrological inevitability. It is a consequence of soil management. Conventionally tilled fields cannot absorb heavy monsoon rainfall, the crust prevents infiltration, the hardpan blocks percolation, and water runs across the surface into waterways, contributing to floods while aquifers receive no recharge. A PQNK field, with its living mulched surface, broken hardpan, permanent deep root channels, and aggregated soil structure, absorbs the same monsoon rainfall fully. Water percolates through the root zone into the subsoil, recharging the aquifer below. Zero evaporation loss. 100% rain absorption. Aquifer level rising rather than declining. At the national scale, converting Pakistan's agricultural land to PQNK could absorb seasonal floods completely, recharge aquifers currently in terminal decline, and transform the country's hydrological balance from chronic deficit to sustainable surplus. The textbooks were not wrong about the climate. They were wrong about the soil. Global fossil fuel combustion releases approximately 10 gigatons of carbon dioxide per year. The world spends trillions of dollars on climate technology in pursuit of solutions to this annual burden. And yet the most effective carbon sink in the history of the planet, living agricultural soil, is being actively degraded at a rate that accelerates carbon release rather than sequestration. If the world's 1.5 billion hectares of agricultural land were converted to PQNK management, soil carbon sequestration potential is estimated at 6 to 12 gigatons of carbon dioxide per year, within the range required to offset the entirety of annual global fossil fuel emissions. The mechanism requires no battery, no solar panel, no reactor, and no engineering. Plants capture atmospheric carbon through photosynthesis. The liquid carbon pathway delivers it below ground. Soil biology stabilizes it in aggregates and organic matter for decades to centuries. Living plants. Living soil. Stable carbon. From atmosphere to soil. From problem to solution. A country that cannot feed itself is not sovereign, it is dependent. Pakistan, like many developing nations, imports massive quantities of staple crops, edible oils, and processed foods every year, generating foreign currency outflows, economic dependency, and farmer indebtedness. PQNK offers a 5-year transformation pathway to food sovereignty. In years 1 and 2, protocol implementation begins, imports start to reduce, and first exports appear. By year 3, food production accelerates and exports grow. By year 4, wheat imports are eliminated and pulse imports substantially reduced. By year 5, all imports are eliminated and export surpluses are secured. At maturity, Pakistan becomes an exporter of premium wheat, organic pulses, high-nutrition oilseeds, and chemical-free produce. PQNK is not aid. It is not a subsidy program. It is a protocol, applicable to any country, any climate, any soil, that converts agricultural dependence into agricultural sovereignty and national deficit into national abundance. The chain from soil to human health is direct, measurable, and causally traceable. Living soil creates the conditions in which plant roots access a full spectrum of minerals, microbial signals, and biological compounds. The plant, receiving this complete nutritional environment, manufactures a richer spectrum of compounds, polyphenols, glucosinolates, terpenes, carotenoids, essential trace minerals, complex carbohydrates, vitamins, and cofactors, the full vocabulary of phytonutrients that the human body evolved to receive. These bioactive compounds are absorbed and utilized by the body to regulate inflammation, support immunity, optimize metabolism, sustain cognition, and promote cellular repair. Depleted soil produces food that is calorie-rich but nutrient-poor. PQNK soil produces food that nourishes, protects, and supports optimal human health. Chronic disease is not inevitable. It is often a nutritional deficiency disguised as genetics. Heal the soil. Grow real food. Build vibrant health. PQNK is a protocol for people and planet. Between 1970 and 2024, 2 data series have tracked each other with a correlation coefficient of 0.94, one of the strongest correlations in public health data. The first is the Adoption Index of Agrochemical Input Agriculture. The second is the Chronic Disease Incidence Index, the combined burden of type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, and certain cancers. As high-input agriculture expanded, nutritional density fell, pesticide residues in food rose, and the incidence of chronic disease climbed in parallel, in every country where data are available. The causal pathway is established: high-input agriculture degrades soil, depleted soil produces nutritionally incomplete food, and nutritionally incomplete food consumed by a body that evolved to receive something richer manifests over decades as chronic metabolic disease. We cannot cure our way out of a farming problem. We must farm our way to a healthier future. PQNK is that agriculture. Healthy soil. Nutrition-dense food. Healthy people. Strong nation. No single actor can transform agricultural systems at the scale and speed that the ecological and health crises demand. 4 actors must align. Governments must redirect subsidies from chemical fertilizer toward mulch machinery, SIP units, and PQNK implementation. Create PQNK as the official national standard for sustainable agriculture, and invest in the infrastructure, decentralized composting, equipment banks, soil labs, and training centers required for mass transition. Academia must fund independent, long-term research on living soil agronomy, establish PQNK research farms, and replace agrochemical curricula with systems thinking, ecology, and regenerative practice. Finance must underwrite PQNK transition loans, de-risk lenders through credit guarantees and impact funds, and price the true cost of agrochemical agriculture into credit and insurance instruments. And extension services must retrain from fertilizer salespeople to ecosystem facilitators, training field staff in PQNK diagnosis and supporting farmers through the transition. When these 4 actors align, soils regenerate, food becomes nutritious, water cycles stabilize, rural economies thrive, and nations become sovereign. The soil does not wait for consensus. It does not wait for institutional approval, policy reform, or the resolution of academic debate. It responds on the first day that it is allowed to respond, to the first act of care. Stop the flooding. Stop the tilling. Lay the mulch. Plant through the slit. That is the moment the 400 million year operating system reboots beneath that patch of ground. Mycorrhizal networks begin regenerating within weeks. Water infiltration improves within the first rainfall event. Microbial populations recover within months. Earthworms return. Weeds begin to shift composition. Yield matches or exceeds conventional in the first season. Cost falls from the first crop. The evidence in this document, the science, the trials, the economic data, the field measurements across 6 crops and a dozen countries, constitutes a complete case. It does not require supplementation. It requires action. 1 acre. 1 farmer. 1 decision. Multiply that moment by every farmer reading this, and the arithmetic of restoration is complete. The soil is ready. The protocol is here. Begin. 8 worldviews. 8 criteria. 1 outcome. Look across the 8 criteria that decide whether an agricultural system can deliver a living future: soil health, chemical dependency, water, rural economy, biodiversity, production continuity, human well-being, climate balance. The dominant industrial worldview fails on almost every one. Its variants, partial fixes, single-issue solutions, distorted climate framings, score fair, sometimes good, but never complete. Only one position earns excellence on all 8. PQNK is the solution for overall well-being. Soil regenerated. Inputs eliminated. Water stewarded. Sovereignty restored. Biodiversity revived. Production continuous. People nourished. Climate stabilized. This is not a preference between systems. It is the difference between a system that addresses every dimension and a set of systems that address some. Truth over myths. Regeneration over destruction. PQNK is the path to a living future. Soil healed. Water restored. Biodiversity revived. People nourished. Climate stabilized. 1 intervention. 17 outcomes. 3 domains healed together. From the same 42-inch mulched bed flow, 9 agricultural transformations: climate-resilient water management, enhanced crop hardiness against heat and cold, lower operational costs, superior produce quality, extended shelf life, strengthened food sovereignty, simplified operations, reduced production risks, and extended growing periods. From that same bed flow, 4 social and health advancements: community empowerment through training and skills, poverty alleviation through ended indebtedness, preventative health through removed chemical exposure, and nutritional security against malnutrition and famine. And from that same bed flow, 4 environmental restorations: aquifer replenishment, ecosystem regeneration of both soil and ocean, climate stabilization through atmospheric moisture, and carbon sequestration into living soil. 1 mulched bed. 17 outcomes. Soil. Society. Sky. PQNK is not a farming method. It is the path back to a living future. Organic farming is a step in the right direction. But is it far enough? Let's compare conventional organic farming with PQNK, the pristine organic farming system, across 7 dimensions that matter most. At the core, conventional organic farming avoids synthetic chemicals and pesticides. The goal: chemical-free crops. That's a worthy start. But PQNK goes further. The goal isn't just to remove chemicals, it's to regenerate soil, restore water, and rebuild biodiversity. The absence of harm is not the same as the presence of health. When it comes to soil, conventional organic farming uses compost, manure, and natural amendments. It works, but mostly in shallow layers. PQNK breaks the hardpan. It restores deep soil structure and returns natural aeration, healing the soil from the surface all the way down to where roots need to go. Conventional organic still relies on irrigation and focuses on reducing chemical runoff. PQNK takes a different path, restoring the water cycle itself. Through harvesting, infiltration, and building spongy soils, water is held where it belongs, in the earth, available when the plant needs it. Here's a subtle but important distinction. Conventional organic farming still depends on purchased inputs: organic compost, biofertilizers, organic pesticides. You've changed what you buy, but you're still buying. PQNK minimizes external inputs entirely. Fertility is built on site, through biodiversity and biology. The farm feeds itself. Conventional organic farming may still practice monocropping: 1 crop, 1 field, 1 vulnerability. PQNK encourages diverse cropping, cover crops, and agroforestry, mimicking nature's design, where diversity is the defense. This is where the worldview truly diverges. Conventional organic farming is human-centered. The goal: safe food for people. PQNK is ecosystem-centered. Humans matter, and so do bees, worms, microbes, and birds. When the ecosystem thrives, people thrive within it, not apart from it. The outcome of conventional organic farming is certified organic produce for premium markets. A label? A price point. The outcome of PQNK is something far more enduring: long-term soil fertility, restored water cycles, biodiversity, and genuinely healthy food. Not for a market. For a future. PQNK restores natural systems. Organic replaces inputs. One repairs the machine. The other rebuilds the ecosystem. It regenerates soil. It restores the water cycle. It enhances biodiversity. It produces nutritious food. And it secures future generations. That is the difference between organic farming and PQNK, the farming with nature. What you are looking at is what one decision produces, not 17 separate interventions. 1. When you restore the soil, stop the tillage, stop the flooding, cover it, let it breathe, 17 things happen simultaneously. Not one at a time. All at once. 9 of them transform agriculture itself. Water use falls by 70 to 92%. Crops become hardy against extreme heat and cold. Production costs collapse while yields rise. The food that comes out is more nutritious, lasts longer, and costs less to grow. The farmer breaks free from debt. 4 more transform the health and society of the communities that eat this food. The skills return to the land. Poverty retreats. The diseases that have been rising in parallel with agrochemical adoption begin to reverse. People eat food the way their bodies were designed to receive it. And 4 transform the planet itself. Aquifers refill. Rivers, lakes, and water bodies that have been carrying topsoil, nitrates, and pesticide residues for 50 years begin to clear. The atmosphere stabilizes as carbon moves from the air into the soil where it belongs. The ecosystem, above ground and below, regenerates. This is not a list of promises. Every item on this slide has been measured, in real fields, across multiple seasons, on multiple continents. PQNK does not ask you to believe it. It asks you to do it once, and then read what the soil tells you. 1 protocol. Applicable worldwide. Based on Earth's original design. Footnote. PQNK, pronounced picnic, the regenerative and sustainable pristine organic farming system, is grounded in natural ecosystem science. This science employs perennial biodiversity, protects soil with organic mulch, and avoids practices like water inundation, tillage disturbance, and leaving soil bare.